This is a story from the Jiaqing era of the Ming Dynasty. This is a true story about a real person. If you search online, you can find it. His name was Zhang Zong. He was a very legendary figure. In the past, the imperial examination was divided into two levels. The first was the provincial exam. Passing that made you a provincial scholar. Would that make you an official? No, it was not like that. It only made you an educated person. At that time, the country was poor and there were few scholars. So, after passing the exam, people might study medicine, or work in a rural county, doing some minor task, such as a clerk, a registrar for real estate transfers, or helping to resolve small disputes, serving as a member of a minor court, basically a low-ranking official. This was for provincial scholars. If you wanted to become a high-ranking official, you needed to gain more wisdom for another exam, to become an advanced scholar. During each dynasty's examination period, the titles were somewhat different. In the Ming Dynasty, the higher level exam was held in Beijing at the time. That was the palace examination. The exam took place in the emperor's official palace. The emperor and some trusted high officials supervised the exam. Cheating was impossible. So, why was it held in the imperial palace? Because the emperor directly selected talented individuals. Many farmers were illiterate. If scholars wanted to serve the emperor and their country, they had to be very knowledgeable. That's how it was. So this system was justified. Zhang also roughly passed the first exam. After the entry-level exam, he would take the advanced level exam. He was quite interesting. His family had the money to send him to the exams. But he'd failed so many times that the hotel owners all knew him. He'd stay at the inn for half a year to prepare, and after he's failed, study some more and try again. He'd stay at the same place. There weren't many inns back then. Zhang wasn't the brightest guy. He failed the exam 6 times in a row. He started in his 20s and kept trying until he was 47. You could call him an experienced candidate. The others were in their 20s and 30s. He was not young, but he was a candidate like the younger guys. Right. It's not that he wasn't smart, he just had poor luck. Well, maybe he wasn't that smart after all. One day, he became enlightened. There were 2 months left before the exam. He suddenly went to a Buddhist temple to pray. He was inspired. Immediately, he went back to pack his bags. He was well known. The market vendors knew him. He said goodbye to everyone. Why? He felt too embarrassed to sit for the exams. Because he thought he was too old for that. I'll just go home and roast eggs and sweet potatoes, no more test. He was going home, and he said goodbye. He never made it after all those years and attempts. He finally became aware of how embarrassing it was. How could he face his grandchildren? He was the bad example in his family. So, he decided to quit once and for all. The next day, at the door, he was greeted by Xiao, an old fortune teller. He said, "Hey, old Jean, stop, stop. Let me take another look at you. Let me have one last look at you. Come, please sit down, don't be alarmed. Give me a moment, and I'll examine you carefully. Old Jean, you should know my name, right?" This fortune teller's name was Xiao. He was known as Xiao Iron Mouth. He was not an ordinary fortune teller. Who was he? He served the Beijing government. Specifically, within the central government. He was like today's supervising officer. He kept an eye on the officials and reported them to the emperor. Yes. A supervising official. A highly ranked official who could offer advice to the emperor. Because the Ming government didn't pay officials enough, he had to work part-time to earn extra income, and that was legal. The government didn't forbid that. Street vending has a long history in China. He called himself Xiao, the half-sage. His official title was the Imperial Censor. There's a Taiwanese singer called Xiao, right? These are not the same person. Xiao spent his spare time reading fortune. He accurately predicted the futures of some people. When he saw Zhang about to pack up and go home, he stopped him. He claimed that Zhang would make great achievements. But if he were to quit at that time, then he'd remain ordinary for the rest of his life. And that'd be a huge loss. Xiao knew everything. But Zhang thought he'd met a fraud. He was going home. He was too old and too embarrassed to sit for another exam. That old man was just a fraud. That's what Zhang thought. Xiao said, "You don't have to pay me now. But in the future, you'll have to pay me extra." "I won't fall for that," Zhang said. After being convinced by Xiao, Zhang started to give in. Xiao, in pursuit of the ultimate truth, was willing to bet on his title, the Iron Mouth, that Zhang would pass the exam. Zhang wasn't confident. He'd failed the exam 7 times. Xiao was confident that he would pass. He knew that Zhang would achieve more than just being a scholar. In the future, Zhang would be serving the emperor. Do you know what rank an official has when serving the emperor? The eunuchs, empresses, consorts, and maids aren't considered officials. Formal officials, okay? There were usually no more than 3 officials in front of the emperor. These 3 people held all the power of the Ming dynasty. They formed the imperial cabinet back then. In the US Congress, there are cabinet members too. They hold great power and authority. So, once you enter the cabinet, you're bestowed with great power. They're like prime ministers. second only to the emperor, above all others. Zhang was so stunned hearing that he nearly had a nosebleed. His voice began to tremble as he spoke. Zhang said, "If that's true, I'll give you whatever you want." But Xiao didn't care about that. Still, his words still seemed too good to be true. Xiao said, "You'll know in 2 months' time." Well, Zhang had been trying for 20 years. And he could definitely try for another 2 months. So, he decided to try one more time. Just do what you should, and that's it. And leave the rest to fate. In the end, Zhang really took the exam and passed. Of 100 candidates, he ranked 71st. He didn't do that well. If divided into 3 groups, he would be in the 3rd group. That means he was in the tail end. Though it wasn't that impressive, it was the result of his 21 years of hard work. That doesn't mean he wasn't fated to become a man with great power. The high scorers rarely get blessed with great power. Because they're too focused to achieve high scores. Those who score average have thought about ruling the world. They focus on more than just high scores. So, Zhang passed the exam. When he met Xiao, he wanted to pay him, but Xiao refused. Because he was helping out of sincerity. There was one major problem. You see, Zhang wasn't young. And he didn't pass with flying colors. Even if influential figures wanted to support him, they'd think twice. Because Zhang was close to his retirement age, who would bother helping someone like that? The Ming Dynasty government at that time had a history. When the Great Ming Empire was founded, its capital was in Nanjing, which is today's Nanjing City in Jiangsu Province. Nanjing is a major city on the edge of the Yangtze River. What does Jing mean? It usually means capital city. Then, after several decades, after Zhu Yuanzhang's 4th son, Zhu Di, became emperor, he established the Ming Dynasty's northern capital in Beijing. How did he arrange the situation in Nanjing? He was going to make Nanjing as a backup capital. This approach was also quite good. It created 2 sets of government functions and personnel. The most capable managing officials were in Beijing. The backup officials were in Nanjing. The organization and hierarchy were similar. But the real power was in Beijing, roughly like this. This part of the system was inspired by the Song dynasty. After the northern Song was conquered by the Liao kingdom, the southern Song emerged. The emperor thought if Beijing fell, then Nanjing would act as the backup capital. It's not a complete annihilation. Not bad, right? So, Zhang had no one in the court, and he was quite old. So, at the age of 47 or 48, Zhang was sent off to Nanjing to serve as a minor official in the Ministry of Personnel at rank 8. There was no one lower than him, although he passed the exam in the palace. Because no one in the court needed him, he was sent to Nanjing. He had no power, but enough time. He was free all the time, and as a very studious person. He read a lot. We don't know exactly what he read, but he liked reading. Zhang probably read about texts written by Confucius on Li, human ethics. For example, your dad's dad is your grandpa. It establishes your rank and seniority within the family hierarchy. In primitive times, people lived in chaos, not even knowing who their father was. For social order, it became essential to define marriage between one man and one woman. The concept of father, mother, and child didn't exist. Well, maybe people knew who their mother was, but not their father. This is a part of ethics. Once you were officially married, it became clear who was the grandpa, father, grandson, etc. At that time, a succession of the throne was taking place. The late emperor was called the Shende Emperor. He lived to about 30 years old before he died. He spent nearly half his life indulging in pleasures. He had no heirs and never had any children. The palace had a harem of women, but none bore him children. Yes, it might have been due to his illness or health problems. He just couldn't have children. It is even recorded in the history books. That just like a teenager today. This emperor wasn't studious like his peers. He was different, playful and mischievous. For example, he'd keep rare animals in the palace in cages. Anyway, he found all sorts of ways to have fun. But he was also a great emperor. Having fun reflects a young person's curiosity about the world. It also shows a thirst for learning. He was the first Ming Dynasty emperor to travel to the south of the Yangtze River for leisure. All the ministers and various officials, upon learning this, set off to follow him. They wanted him back at the palace for his safety. They couldn't have something bad happening to him. When emperors were having fun outside the palace, they were the only people that were happy. The ministers, on the other hand, would be worried. Everyone was worried that something might go wrong. The officials' concerns weren't without reason. That's how it was. They thought emperors should stay in the capital and manage the country with the ministers. Emperors should behave like emperors. So, wherever he went, the officials would advise him to return to the palace. They all wanted him back at the palace. But he was still a pretty good person. In his 30s, an accident happened. One time, he accidentally fell into a ditch. After being pulled out, he became seriously ill. Not long after, in less than half a year, he passed away. It was regrettable that he had no children to carry on his legacy. Once he died, his successor immediately faced trouble. Even the most powerful ministers wouldn't allow their sons take the throne. If they did, their whole clan would be destroyed. No one would do that. Only the descendants of Zhu Yuanzhang could be promoted and take the throne. After Sheng the emperor passed away, there was one who was very closely related to him, his cousin, who would later become Jiaqing emperor. Not his son, but his cousin. Essentially, his grandfather's cousin would become Jiaqing emperor. What happened during the time of Jiaqing emperor? Take note of this. At that time, influential ministers would rebel if they thought they were powerful enough. When they were powerful enough, they feared no one. At that time, Emperor Jiaqing was only 15 years old. He was young, but also cunning. He's the descendant of Zhu Yuanzhang, after all. He was cunning enough to stand his ground against the 75-year-old. In this court, the officials of the Beijing Imperial Palace, the most powerful among them at the time was the Prime Minister of the previous cabinet, the most powerful man named Yang Tinghe, also known as Minister Yang. He finally showed his true colors. At the age of over 70, he thought the young emperor was too young to be taken seriously. He only got the throne because of his connection with the previous emperor. That's what Yang thought. He thought he'd be the one making all calls. Back then, successors of the throne had to enter the palace through the right gate. Yang made the young emperor enter through the crown prince's gate, which was only meant for sons of deceased emperors. Jiaqing emperor should have entered through the Zhenyang gate, because he was taking over the throne from his cousin. Yang, at that time, wanted to embarrass the young boy. Only when Jiaqing emperor threatened to quit that Yang said, "Fine, go through whichever gate you want." Even the emperors had proper etiquettes to follow. See, a subordinate making things difficult for his boss. Like I said, Jiaqing emperor had guts. He was not someone you could mess with easily. He threatened to quit, passing this difficult problem back to Yang. When Yang found that the young boy was tough to deal with, he let him enter through whichever gate he wanted. That's how the power struggle started. The emperor was being bullied because he was young. Today, when a young chairman succeeds his dad, the old board members would make things difficult for him. Yes, because he's young. If you're weak, you'd be tossed around by the old foxes. That's how it is. After Jiajing Emperor got to the throne, new troubles arose. It was that official Yan, the most powerful minister, holding immense power. Hundreds of officials below him were all appointed by him. You see, what did Emperor Zhengde do when he was alive? He was just playing around, really to an extreme. He was just a mischievous child. He did accomplish many things that benefited the people, but he was too playful. That's why, while he was having fun, everything was handled by Yan. Every call, big or small, was made by Yan. Yan was more influential than the late emperor. If Yan wanted to cross Jiajing Emperor, the other ministers would follow suit. It's like, if the young emperor proposed something, and Yang opposed it, the rest would also oppose it. So, did that 15-year-old emperor feel pressure? Then, the powerful Yang, after the gate issue, was still bitter. Using traditional culture and the proper rites as excuses, he told Jiajing Emperor that all emperors succeeded their fathers, and no one should be exempted. Jiajing Emperor should officially recognize Zhengde Emperor's parents as his own parents, since he couldn't recognize his cousin as his father. Then what about the emperor's real, deceased parents? Well, since he would be recognizing Emperor Zhengde's parents as his parents, for his own parents, he should recognize them as his uncle and aunt. Yang Tinger's bad idea, calling your own parents as uncle and aunt, and cousin's parents as your father and mother. Emperor Jiajing was furious. He thought that was nonsense. And Yang had crossed his line. But what could he do? The rest of the court all acted on Yang's order. What if the 300 officials said the same thing to him? He couldn't just pretend like that never happened. The young emperor had a hard time with the old fox. He swore he'd get rid of him one day. Still, he kept his cool and didn't act recklessly, because he thought his servants might be Yang's informants. So, he kept his cool. He didn't dare to curse in the palace either. He did it silently. When the young emperor realized there wasn't much he could do, he started behaving like a spoiled brat, threatening not to eat, and not to attend the court because he's ill. That's what a teenager would usually do, right? To what extent did he resist? Until Yang withdrew his proposal. Emperor Jiajing's reason was simple. He would not address his aunt and uncle as his parents. Just because he didn't inherit the throne from his own father. It's that simple. When nothing was working, he had one more trick up his sleeve. He stopped attending court sessions. He didn't care, even if Yang got someone else to do it. That's when Yang knew the young emperor was not someone he could mess with. Everyone knew Yang was picking on the young emperor. But they kept quiet because they were forced to pick a side, and that was Yang's side. No one dared to speak up. I believe there were good guys among the corrupt ones. But they dared not stand up against Yang. Some had written to the emperor expressing their stand. But they were either locked up or assassinated by Yang's men. At that time, Zhang, who had nothing to do in Nanjing, heard about this matter. He couldn't stand this. He decided to help the poor emperor out. In his studies, he specialized in the study of rites and customs. "2,000 to 3,000 years ago, during the Warring States, and spring and autumn periods, there were philosophers studying rites and Tao, the way. I mean, a very large group of people. The enlightened could explain these rites very clearly. Even the emperor's titles were part of these. The rites covered customs such as the naming of titles, the need for the emperors to have multiple wives, the practice of kowtow, etc. But how could Zhang take on Yang? Yang was a prodigy. He became a provincial scholar at just 13 or 14 years old. As for Zhang, he only passed at 18. Yang passed the palace examination at 21. He was among the top 3. Zhang studied for 21 years and made it into the 3rd tier. So their intelligence levels were vastly different. But this did not affect Zhang's future meteoric rise. When Zhang heard about the emperor, he knew he had to step up. He insisted on citing classics, quoting exactly from the Book of Rites. He was going to tell Yang that his ideas of calling your aunt and uncle your parents, and your parents your uncle and aunt, were utter nonsense. He was quoting the classics. For an entire week straight, he pondered and wrote a very important letter, and sent it to the emperor. At that time, all letters to the emperor were controlled by Yang. It was just a day when Yang was feeling unwell, and the eunuch saw Zhang's letter, meant to be received by the emperor. They directly sent it to the emperor. The emperor, reading Zhang's letter, said, "Oh my heavens, I am saved. Finally, I found someone who understands me." His spirits were lifted. There, with the letter in his hand, he went to Yang, telling him about all historical ancient works, the Book of Rites, and the theoretical foundations that created those customs. Finally, the young emperor could say, "I was right and you're wrong," with confidence. So, how was Yang going to refute that? Well, he couldn't. Then, he teared up, knelt to the ground and said, "Your Majesty, I should retire." The emperor was happy and approved his request immediately. He wanted it done right away, and even paid for his retirement. He'd wanted him gone for so long, for making his life difficult every day. As soon as old Yang left, the emperor also wrote a letter to bring in Zhang. With Yang gone, the corrupt officials vowed revenge. They planned to kill Zhang in an ambush. It was Yang's son who came up with the idea. He was also a high-ranking official at the time. There was a road, at that time. It's a place where killing won't get you punished. 100 officials were waiting to ambush Zhang. Right there, at the place where killing was allowed. Zhang's personality was a bit like mine. Not great at studying, but learning everything. He studied military strategy. He knew that the corrupt officials wouldn't let him off easily. So, Zhang found an informant to scout ahead first. He then found out that the ambush was real. So Zhang entered the city at night, even wearing makeup to blend in. Less than a month later, he was directly promoted by the emperor to work by his side. In just 1 year, he became the emperor's right-hand man. And 3 to 5 years later, his power rose even more. The peak of his authority lasted for about 10 years. He rose to such a position of great power. By the 2nd or 3rd year of his peak, he started to think of Shao. At that time, he was feared because of his power. He even had his own guards. He remembered his benefactor back then, Shao, the guy who told his fortune. He decided to pay him a visit. At Shao's place, he thanked him for his advice. If not, he'd have really missed a great opportunity. Shao was happy to see his old friend, too. So, how did Shao know that Zhang would rise to become a powerful figure? Shao said, "Heaven's secrets must not be revealed." So, they drank a bit. When Shao got a bit tipsy, he said something about one of Zhang's previous lifetimes. In one lifetime, Zhang was an orphan. And then what? They drank more. And in the end, during those 5 or 6 hours that night, he told the whole story. So, don't drink. This is how it turned out. Zhang, in one of his previous lifetimes, was an orphan in a village. No one knew who his parents were. Even Zhang had no memories about his parents. From the time he had memories, he was always alone. He lived in a shack outside the village. It was a shack, not even a proper house. The kind of shack farmers stay under when it's raining or when it gets sunny. Yes, that kind of shack. He didn't have food all the time. He was about 1.45 meters tall. He was short, unattractive in appearance. His back was slightly hunched and a bit slow-witted. Yes. He was not young, but no matchmaker came with a proposal. One day, John, this little orphan, saw a monk walking over to beg for alms while he was working. The monk was begging, holding a monk's staff, with iron rings on top. The clanging let people know the monk's arrival. But the people followed Taoism, not Buddhism. So whenever a Buddhist monk came for alms, none would make offering. The neglected John felt a sense of happiness when he saw that monk. To Jean, he looked both tired and hungry. It was not like a monk in movies, a grand, towering figure like Buddha. It was an ordinary monk, hungry, weak, with a sallow and thin face. There was no heroic or majestic aura, none at all. The monk was starving badly, yet no one offered him food to eat. Zhang, with a heart full of compassion, wanted to offer the monk 2 sweet potatoes. But his low self-esteem made him think that maybe the monk would despise him. Then, he went to wait at the route. The monk would have to pass through to get to the next village. When the monk approached him, Zhang handed over the sweet potatoes. The monk ate everything in a rush. Then left without even looking back. Zhang felt a sense of happiness. He was despised by the villagers. Yet the monk ate the food he offered. He was so happy. He then continued to offer food to the monk for a total of 10 times. When he was about to do it the 11th time, he fell ill. He was so sick, barely hanging on. Again, that day, no one offered food to the monk. The monk went to check out John, who was ill and stayed in his shack. Zhang said, "I feel like my time is running out. Can I still offer a meal one more time?" "Of course. What else do you have to offer?" He said there was still half a steamed bun covered in the bowl. The monk said, "I gladly accept." When he offered that half a steamed bun, the monk gladly accepted it. He then asked Zhang, "Child, you always offer to me. Do you have any thoughts, requests, or expect any reward?" Zhang shook his head and said, "No, I just feel very happy." After that, Zhang passed away in that lifetime. Take note, okay? He offered for a total of 11 times without asking for anything in return. The reborn Zhang, during the reign of Emperor Jiajing, became the most powerful official for 10 years. Chao said due to his previous karma, he would not be born intelligent. The best he could achieve was a county magistrate. That's it. But his merit from offering to monks was selfless and without expectation. So he'd end up as the second most powerful man in the era of the Jiaqing Emperor. The core theory of Buddhism is very scientific and fair. The Buddha taught us this very scientific and fair principle. He told us that our fate in this life shows the law of cause and effect. After attaining enlightenment, the Buddha delivered the ultimate truth. It is this law of cause and effect. You reap what you sow. The kind of seed you plant is the kind of fruit you will harvest. That sounds very reasonable, doesn't it? So, look at spring in March or April. When you plant certain seeds, months later, when they mature, you'll know what you sowed. So, there are a few more things to mention. What if your harvest doesn't come that early? How many years does it take to get apples from an apple tree? Small apple trees bear fruit in as fast as 3 years. You'll get a few small apples, that's it. I think it needs about 4 to 5 years for it to start producing apples. But if you don't cut down an apple tree, it can grow for decades just fine. Alright, that's for a tree. Also, if it's not a fruit tree, and I want to plant a tree for timber in the future, which I could harvest to make pillars and beams when building a house. How many years does that take? Usually about 20 years for most trees. If it's not an excessively hard wood, it should take about 20 years. Rosewood might need several hundred years. This means our cause and effect, like sowing and reaping, ranges from a few months to several years, to several decades, to several centuries. Life is short. Human life lasts only about 80 to 100 years at most. So if you want a good future, what should you do now? What kind of seeds should you start sowing now? Plant good seeds, and you will reap good fruits in the future. Many people are born into very poor families. Some are born into extremely wealthy and prestigious families. Some are born with good appearances. Others are born without good health or looks. As people grow older, they start to compare. Why is my family not as good as theirs? Why is his dad more capable than mine? Why do they have more money and are also good looking? You start to question why you have a poor life when you haven't done anything wrong. According to the law of cause and effect, it could be from a past life. During the Buddha's birthday celebration, if you offer flowers, you will receive a beautiful and dignified appearance. Of course, this is just a saying. If you often kidnap and kill others for no reason, you may offer tons of flowers, and you still won't get a good appearance. We're talking about Zhang, an ordinary farmer, not evil, who might be still affected by the 5 poisons. What if Zhang offered a flower once at a Dharma event to the Buddha? At Tea College, offering flowers costs just a few dollars. But it shows respect and wins the Buddha's joy. When I see that sincerity, I want to protect that person. If from the moment we are born, we're already less fortunate than the others. It's not about what you did in this lifetime. This is already a result from birth. So when was the seed for this planted? It was probably in a past life or even earlier. It's like a person constantly accumulating points. For example, have you exercised this month? If you haven't, then this month counts as 0. If you have, then it gets recorded. Some fitness games track how many calories you've burned or consumed. Everything is recorded. That's how life works. All your merits and demerits are recorded when you do something. Like when greed arises and you harm others. People are not aware when their greed causes pain. You cheat someone, then the cheated person, while riding his bike, is too sad to see an incoming truck and he gets hit. That's how it is. This is the pain your greed indirectly caused. As a result, you accumulate bad karma, and it'll show in the fate you possess. I hope everyone can read more about this. Therefore, our actions are extremely important. Again, a single kind and compassionate thought is so important. Fill your heart with compassion, and your fate will undergo a profound transformation. The next life is a bit too far. In this life, for ourselves. Whether it's physical or mental health, or states of mind, or the benefits on our family and children, this should be a tremendous help. Some destined outcomes, like great disasters and calamities, are predetermined. Can these inevitable events be avoided? The answer is yes. The Buddha says, to know your future, look at what you're doing now. If you adjust and correct your mindset, the result will change. But if you become worse than you are now, bad things will come faster and be even greater. If you can't even offer a little bit of compassion and kindness, your fate will not transform. This is something we must begin to understand. The Buddha's teaching on the law of cause and effect is extremely fair in this way. You reap what you sow, and that's fair enough. Kindness makes a bright future. Evil gets you a bleak future. Our actions are guided by our thoughts. You could say that our future is shaped by our current state of mind. There is the cause and effect, and it's very fair. The way of the natural world is fair. That's how it is. The more we understand nature, the more we realize that heaven is extremely fair. I dedicate this story to everyone.
小的红点里，人生就此欢喜。我快乐了，我健康了，我幸福了，我美丽了。在茫茫人海之中，让我与你相遇。小小的红点里，人生变得神奇。我智慧了，